Hi, Miss Ella. Hi, everyone. So we've reached the Romantic period. You are going to love what you hear from this time, from the 19th century. What does the word romantic mean to you? Does it mean something about love? Well, that's part of it, but as Miss Ella said, in music what we really mean is storytelling, because the word romantic comes from the French word for storybook. In the Romantic period, the old fairy tales you know, like Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, they were revived and became very popular. And some of the buildings designed in that period were made to look as though they came out of a fairy tale too. Now, fairy tales have heroes, right? They might be very brave, or very sad, or very clever, and face difficult challenges. Romantic music is like that too. It might be very fast, or very slow, or very anxious, or very happy. And who might be the hero of these musical tales? Very often, the hero is the composer herself. Imagine that. In the Baroque period, the hero was the king, or God. In the classical period, the hero was the music itself, very clear and beautifully put together. But in the Romantic period, it's often the composer's own feelings we're hearing about. What I mean? Let's listen again to that music by Clara Schumann. Think about what she might be telling us. Can you hear what she's feeling? Can you hear the actual flow of her emotions? The composer, and actually the performer too, are now the focus. It can be very personal. And sometimes the way they tell their story makes you, the listener, feel as though it's your story too. One of the things we talked about in the classical period was contrast. Do you remember? Well, in the Romantic period, the contrasts get much bigger, and they're really contrasts of emotion. A romantic piece will take you on a journey through different feelings and stories, like reading a chapter book. For instance, listen to some of this symphony by Johannes Brahms, who was a close friend of Clara Schumann and her husband Robert. This beautiful singing melody suddenly takes off on a journey. It takes us through a whirlwind of different emotions, getting more and more excited. Talk about contrast. Now, during this time, there were revolutions across Europe. People were actually getting rid of their kings and emperors and creating new kinds of countries. Many smaller countries were born, and their people wanted to celebrate their own folk traditions. That's why those old fairy tales were revived, and the same was true for folk music. Many Romantic composers found ways to bring folk melodies and rhythms into their own classical music. Here's an example. The composer Antonín Dvořák, inspired by a Czech folk dance, making for some very lively orchestra music. What a big sound, right? Romantic composers tried to outdo each other in emotion and in sound. It took more and more musicians to make all that sound. Romantic composers asked for more and more brass instruments, which sound so brilliant and could play so loud. With all that sound, composers needed bigger groups of string players and woodwind players too, so the orchestra grew and grew. For Bach, in the Baroque period, an orchestra might have had 15 players. For Mozart, in the classical period, maybe 25 or 30 players. For Dvořák, in that music we just heard, 70 or 75 musicians. And then later, with a composer named Gustav Mahler, the orchestra grew to 100 musicians or more. There is so much exciting music from the Romantic period. Stories and folk music and big orchestra and big emotions. I'm certain you'll find pieces that seem to tell your own story, your own emotions. That's the magic of this music. I'll see you again when we get to the next period of music. Until then, keep listening and keep playing.
Thank you so much, Ted. As always, it's fascinating to hear you talking about music.